Some women fall in love with men who love them back. Elena Voss fell in love with a man who was about to marry someone else, and somehow that wasn't even the hardest part of her year. By the time this story ends, there will be a wedding, a car wreck on a rain-soaked highway, a man who forgets his entire life, a wife who tries to poison her own husband, and a nurse who has to decide how much of the truth she's willing to risk everything.
If you love slow burn mafia romance with a woman who outsmarts everyone in the room, stay until the end. Subscribe to Korean Afro mafia romance stories now, because the moment Damien Cross remembers who he is, nothing in that family is ever the same again. Let's begin. Cross Manor sat behind 12-foot iron gates on the edge of the city. The kind of house people slowed their cars down to stare at, but never dared to knock on. Everyone in the city knew the name Cross. Few said it above a whisper. The family had built its empire on shipping routes, on real estate that laundered more than money, and on a code of loyalty enforced by fear as often as respect. At the head of it sat Don Alexander Cross, a man who had buried 2 brothers, 1 rival, and any softness he might have once had. His only son, Damien, had grown up in that house, learning 2 lessons before he learned to read. Never trust anyone completely, and never let anyone see you bleed. 6 months before this story really begins, Don Alexander suffered a stroke in his study, collapsing over a stack of contracts he'd never finished signing. The family, terrified of appearing weak to their rivals, brought in private medical staff instead of a hospital. That's how Elena Voss walked through those iron gates for the first time. A private duty nurse with steady hands and a reputation for discretion, hired to keep the most dangerous man in the city alive.
She wasn't afraid of blood. She wasn't afraid of the armed men who stood at every door pretending to be gardeners. She was only afraid of one thing: losing this job, and with it, the income that was keeping her mother's hospital bills from burying them both. What she hadn't expected was Damien. He was the kind of handsome that came with a warning label: sharp jaw, colder eyes, a voice that made grown men in tailored suits stop talking mid-sentence. Everyone in that house flinched when he entered a room. Elena didn't. The first time he found her checking his father's IV line at 2 in the morning, he leaned against the doorway and studied her the way he studied everyone, looking for the angle, the agenda, the thing she wanted from him. He never found one. "You're the only person in this house who isn't scared of me," he said. "Should I be?" she asked, without looking up from the monitor. "Everyone else is." "I don't work for you," she said simply. "I work for your father's heart rate." He almost smiled. It was the first time in longer than he could remember that someone had spoken to him like he was just a man, and not a name that made people careful. That was how it started. Not with flowers, not with promises whispered in the dark. With a dangerous man quietly falling for the one person in his house who had never once tried to flatter him. It didn't take long for Damien to understand that whatever was growing between himself and his father's nurse would never be allowed to bloom. Men like him didn't marry for feeling. They married for territory. He was summoned to his father's study on a gray Tuesday afternoon, the kind of call that always meant business, never comfort. "Sit," Don Alexander said, not looking up from his desk. "If this is about the shipment," Damien started. "It's about the Reyes family," his father cut in. "Miguel Reyes controls every port from here to the border. We need him more than he needs us right now. And the only currency that matters to a man like Miguel is blood ties. His daughter, Camila, will be your wife by spring." Damien felt something in his chest go cold and still. "I don't know her." "You don't need to know her," his father said. "You need to marry her. This family survives on alliances, not affection. I built this empire on that lesson, and I will not watch you burn it down chasing something softer. There was a long silence. Damien thought, briefly, of a nurse who spoke to him like he was simply a man, and understood, in that moment, exactly how impossible that thought had always been. "And if I refuse?" he asked quietly. His father finally looked up. "Then you're not the son I raised to lead this family." Outside the study door, Elena stood frozen with a tray of evening medication in her hands, close enough to hear every word through the old wood, far enough that she could pretend, later, she hadn't. She didn't cry. She didn't confront anyone. She simply carried the tray the rest of the way down the hall, because that was the job, and the job was the only thing keeping her family afloat. But that night, alone in the small staff quarters at the edge of the estate,
She allowed herself exactly one thought. It was never going to be simple, was it? The wedding took place in a private chapel 3 months later, filled with men who owned half the city's underground, and women who had perfected the art of pretending not to notice their husband's scars. Camila Reyes walked down the aisle in white lace, chin lifted, eyes doing the quiet math of everything she stood to gain. She was beautiful in the practiced way of someone raised to be seen and evaluated. She did not look at Damien like a woman in love. She looked at him like a business deal finally closing.
Just before the vows, she leaned in close enough that only he could hear her. "Don't worry," she murmured. "I don't expect love. I expect a seat at the table. That's all this is." "Then we understand each other," Damien said, and something in his voice had already gone flat and resigned. From the back row, dressed plainly among the designer gowns, Elena watched the man she had no claim to promise his life to a stranger. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself a great many things that day and believed almost none of them.
Beside her, Marisol, the estate's head housekeeper and the closest thing Elena had to a friend in that house, leaned over gently. "You should go home, Elena," she whispered. "This isn't really a day for staff to watch." "I'm not staff today," Elena murmured back. "I'm just a woman saying goodbye to something that was never mine to keep." The reception ended just after midnight, the kind of storm rolling in that made every driver on the road grip the wheel a little tighter. In the back of the town car, Camila was already scrolling through her phone, texting her cousin Victor about the security detail she wanted reassigned once she moved into the estate permanently. Damien sat beside her in silence, staring out at the rain-streaked window, already grieving a version of his life he hadn't chosen and couldn't undo. Neither of them saw the truck until it was too late. It came through the intersection at full speed, running the light, and the driver of the town car barely had time to shout a warning before metal screamed against metal. The car spun twice before slamming into the guardrail, glass shattering across the back seat in a bright, violent instant. For a few seconds, there was only the sound of rain hitting broken glass and the low static hum of a radio still playing somewhere in the wreck. Camila came to first, crawling out through a shattered window with a sprained wrist and a torn dress, screaming for someone, anyone, to help her. Not once did she call for her husband. Damien was pulled from the wreckage unconscious, a deep gash above his temple, blood running into the rain-soaked collar of his tuxedo. The paramedics moved fast and clipped, the way people move when they already suspect the worst. "He's got a pulse," one of them called out. "Head trauma. Get him to Cross Private, not the county hospital, now." The sirens screamed off into the storm, carrying away a man who had no idea yet just how much he was about to lose. Damien woke 3 days later in a private recovery room he didn't recognize. tubes taped along one arm, a soft, steady beeping marking each second like a clock counting down to nothing. A woman in pale blue scrubs stood at his bedside, adjusting a monitor with quiet, practiced hands. Who are you? He asked, his voice rough and unused. She turned, and something flickered behind her eyes before she steadied it. I'm your nurse, she said gently.
He lifted his hand slowly, noticing for the first time the ring on his finger. Whose ring is this? Elena hesitated a beat too long before answering. Your wife, sir. Camila. The name meant nothing to him. Neither did the woman who walked in only minutes later, smoothing her expression into something that resembled relief. Damien, thank God you're awake, Camila said, reaching for his hand. I'm sorry, he said, studying her face like a stranger's, because to him, that's exactly what she was. Have we met? Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and behind it, quietly, something far more dangerous than grief began to take shape. Out in the hallway, away from her husband's blank, searching eyes, Camila's calm finally cracked. He doesn't remember me, she hissed to her cousin Victor. Any of it. Not the wedding, not who I am, none of it. That's either the worst thing that's ever happened to you, Victor said slowly, or the best. Camila's eyes narrowed, calculating. If he never remembers being married to me, I'll never actually inherit anything from this family. His father barely tolerates me as it is. I need Damien alive just long enough to sign the estate transfer papers his lawyers already have drafted. After that,
She let the sentence hang in the recycled hospital air. After that, Victor finished quietly. A man with no memory and a weakened heart could have any number of unfortunate relapses. No one would even question it. Camila straightened her dress, smoothed her expression back into the picture of a devoted wife, and walked back into her husband's room with a smile that had already decided his fate. She began caring for him in small, deliberate ways after that, bringing him tea he never asked for, insisting on delivering his medication personally, dismissing the household nurses from his room for privacy, one gentle excuse at a time. She was patient, she was thorough, and she assumed, like most people who underestimate quiet women, that no one in that house was paying close enough attention to notice. She assumed wrong.
Elena noticed first. She always noticed first. It was the job, and it was also simply who she was. She caught it in the numbers before she caught it in Camila's smile. A slow, unusual climb in Damien's potassium levels, 3 times in 1 month. Each time explained away as stress, as recovery, as nothing worth worrying about. Your potassium's climbing again, Elena said carefully, reviewing his chart while Camila hovered nearby with a tea tray. Are you accusing me of something, Nurse Voss? Camila asked, her voice gone sharp and cold. I'm not accusing anyone, Elena said evenly. I'm doing my job, which means from now on, I handle his medication tray myself. Camila's smile thinned into something closer to a warning. Careful, you're staff here. Don't forget your place. Elena met her eyes without flinching. My place is keeping him alive. Yours doesn't seem to be. That night, after the house had gone quiet, Elena quietly swapped out the tea service, saved a sample of the vitamin supplement Camila had been feeding her husband under the guise of care, and sent it to an independent lab under a friend's name, far from any records the cross-family lawyers could bury. She said nothing to Damien. Not yet. In a house like this, she had learned, accusations without proof were a fast way to disappear. She would wait. She would gather everything she needed, and she would not move until she was certain. Without the memory of the empire waiting for him, without the coldness his father had spent a lifetime carving into him, Damien became, slowly, someone gentler than the man he'd been before the crash.
He asked Elena questions like a curious child rediscovering the world. "Do I have any hobbies?" he asked one afternoon. "Friends? Anything that isn't business and contracts?" "You used to sketch," Elena told him, surprising even herself with the warmth in her voice. "I found an old notebook in your study once, tucked behind a shelf. You never let anyone see it. Will you show me?" She did, and in the quiet hours between his physical therapy sessions and his father's mounting impatience for him to come back to himself, something unguarded grew between them. Not built on the man he had been, but on the man slowly rebuilding himself in front of her, page by page, memory by memory. One evening, flipping through the notebook together, Damien stopped on a sketch of a woman's profile. The line of her jaw, the tilt of her eyes, unmistakable. "Elena," he said slowly. "Did I draw this before the accident?" She swallowed. "You did. Then some part of me already knew you mattered," he said quietly, "even before I lost everything else." "Don't," she whispered, stepping back. "You're still married, Damien. Whatever this is, doesn't feel like nothing," he said. "Not to me. I don't think it does to you either." She didn't answer that. She didn't have to. Her silence said enough.
The lab results arrived on a quiet Thursday morning, and Elena stared at them for a long time before she made her decision. She did not bring them to Damien first. She brought them to the one man in that house with the power to act on them without hesitation, Don Alexander Cross. He read the report twice, his expression unreadable before he finally spoke. "Digitalis," he said, in small, repeated doses. This would have stopped his heart within the year, and it would have looked entirely natural to anyone who wasn't looking closely. "I have the tea samples," Elena said, "and 2 of the kitchen staff will confirm that Camila insisted on preparing his tray herself every single time, starting the week he lost his memory." Don Alexander's voice went dangerously quiet. "You've been protecting my son this entire time." "Someone had to," Elena said simply. "Why didn't you come to me sooner?" "Because I needed to be certain," she said, "before I destroyed someone's life, even hers." The old man studied her for a long moment, the first flicker of real respect crossing a face that rarely gave anything away for free.
It happened without warning. Damien was walking past the private chapel where he'd been married months earlier when something behind his eyes seemed to tear open all at once. The vows he barely remembered speaking, Camila's cold, calculated voice at the altar, his father's ultimatum in that study, all of it crashing back in a single violent wave that dropped him to his knees against the chapel doorway. "Damien!" Elena rushed to him, catching his shoulder as he gasped for breath. "I remember," he choked out. "I remember all of it." She knelt beside him, steadying him. "Damien!"
He looked up at her, something fierce and clear burning behind his eyes for the first time since the accident. "I remember marrying a woman I never loved," he said. "And I remember that you were the only real thing in any of it, before I even knew why."
The family gathered in the main hall that evening. Don Alexander seated at the head of the long table, Camila summoned without being told why, and Victor pulled from a locked upstairs room where state security had already found him quietly packing a bag. "What is this?" Camila demanded, glancing around the room. Damien stood slowly, every trace of the gentler man from the recovery room gone now, replaced by something colder, every inch his father's son. "This is where you explain to everyone in this room," he said, "why there was enough digitalis in my tea to stop a man's heart 3 separate times." Camila went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." Elena stepped forward and set the lab report on the table without a word. "The lab does," she said,
So do the two staff members who watched you personally prepare his tray every single day, starting the week he woke up and didn't recognize you.
Victor broke first, his voice shaking. She made me help her. She said once he signed the estate transfer papers, he wouldn't need to wake up again. Shut up, Camila hissed. You tried to kill my son, Don Alexander said, his voice terrifyingly calm. For a signature. I tried to survive a marriage I never wanted either, Camila shot back, her composure finally shattering. You think I asked for any of this? No, Damien said quietly. But I never asked you to poison me for it. Security led Camila and Victor out of the estate that night, toward a fate the family would handle quietly, in the way families like the Crosses always handled things, with the kind of speed only old money and older secrets could buy. The marriage was annulled within the week. No headlines, no trial, just silence, closing over the whole affair like water over a stone. Weeks later, Elena found herself in the estate garden in the early evening, still in her scrubs, still pretending she wasn't listening for a certain set of footsteps behind her. Damien found her there. I don't have a ring yet, he said quietly, and I don't have a good enough excuse for how long it took me to say this. I just know I don't want to spend one more day pretending I don't love you.
Elena turned to face him, something unguarded crossing her expression for maybe the first time since she'd walked through those iron gates. You've almost died twice since I met you, she said. I don't think I know how to love you the polite, careful way. Then don't, Damien said. Love me the way you saved me. Stubborn, unwilling to let go. That, she said, a small smile breaking through despite herself, I think I can do. From the terrace above, Don Alexander watched the two of them in the fading light, saying nothing. But for the first time in longer than anyone in that house could remember, something like approval crossed his face. Draw up new papers, he said quietly to Marisol, who stood beside him. The next Mrs. Cross earned her seat at this table the hard way. She always did things the hard way, sir, Marisol said with a small smile of her own. And in a house built on fear, alliances, and blood, for the first time in a generation, a marriage was finally being built on something else entirely.